What was JFK really trying to tell us all about Israel? Which, before I go any further, let me just say this is for educational purposes only. Now, before I go any further, okay, this is the most important part of this article that anybody needs to read. Kennedy tried to stop the Israeli nuclear weapons program. This issue was kept so secret that crucial documents and letters have only been released in recent years. And as we should all know, Kennedy was a strong advocate for stopping nuclear proliferation, especially after the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. He realized how easy it would be to intentionally or accidentally trigger a catastrophic nuclear war, something that Israel has recently been threatening Iran with. It really makes you wonder why the US is supplying Israel with billions of more dollars. Well, as you can see here, Kennedy's policies challenged and opposed the military and political ambitions of Zionist Israel. At the time, Israel had only existed for 13 years, okay? Well, as you can see right here, it was still evolving and the course was not totally set. There was a significant international resolve to find a compromise solution regarding Palestinian refugees from the 1948 Nakba. And as you can see, when Israel attacked Egypt, right, they seized the Sinai Peninsula in 1956. The Eisenhower administration demanded Israel withdraw from the captured territory and they complied. This article describes it perfectly. At this time in the early 1960s, prominent Jewish voices criticized the racism and discrimination of the Israeli government. Israelis like Martin Buber sailed Ben Gurion and noted that at the inception of the state, complete equality with the Jewish citizens was promised to the Arab population. This might give you a little insight as to what's happening in Palestine as well. Many influential Israelis realized their long-term security and well-being depended on finding a just settlement with the indigenous Palestinian population. And in the United States, the Jewish community was divided and many were anti-Zionist. Sounds pretty familiar, right? The American Council for Judaism was influential and anti-nationalist. As you can see, the supposed racist and militaristic character of Israel was not yet set in stone, nor was American Jewish support for Israel. When Menachem Begin, this is an important character, okay, came to the United States in 1948, he was denounced by prominent Jewish leaders, including Albert Einstein. They said Begin, who later became Israeli prime minister, was a terrorist in quotations who preached in a mixture of ultranationalism, religious mysticism, and racial superiority. This is the most important part of this entire series of information, okay? There are 4 key areas where the Kennedy policy was substantially different than what followed after his death. And that starts with Kennedy not being biased in favor of Israel. As you can see, the Kennedy administration sought good relations with both Israel and the Arab nations. Kennedy aimed to extend U.S. influence throughout the Middle East, including with nations friendly with the Soviet Union and at odds with NATO partners. And JFK personally supported Arab and African nationalism. But check this out, right? As a senator in 1957, he criticized the Eisenhower administration for supporting and sending weapons to France in their war against the Algerian independence movement. And as we all might remember, in a 9,000-word presentation to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he criticized Western imperialism and called for the U.S. to support Algerian independence. Algerian President Ben Bella, who France had tried to assassinate and considered far too radical by many in NATO, was given a huge and impressive welcome to the White House. That was a big problem, because Kennedy changed the previous frosty relations with the United Arab Republic, Egypt and Syria, and for the first time the US approved loans to them. Kennedy wrote respectful letters to the Arab presidents before he welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Ben Gurion to Washington. The Arab leaders could see the difference and responded with appreciation though. Those who claim there was no difference with Kennedy ignore the fact that Egypt's Nasir, Algeria's Ben Bella, and other nationalist leaders saw a big difference. Now in 1960, when Kennedy was campaigning for the presidency, okay, with an individual by his side by the name of Pazar, he spoke at the Zionists of America convention. But wait, we'll come back to this. Pazar returned to Washington in 1960 to become a member of John Kennedy's Economic and Foreign Policy Task Force. But he was also an advisor to the State Department, the Senate, and House committees. But get this right, Pazar was the longtime lawyer and confidant of Robert Maxwell himself, aka Ghislaine Maxwell's father. Yes, the same exact one that was associated with Jeffrey Epstein. But get this, Pazar was possibly the last person supposedly to speak to Maxwell before he apparently fell to his death from his luxury yacht. And can you guess who Pazar's stepson is? I'm sure that's not ironic, right? Blinken was previously National Security Advisor to Joe Biden when he was Vice President to Barack Obama from 2009 to 2013. But get this, at the convention, JFK made remarks about Israel but also expressed the need for friendship with all of the people in the Middle East, including Palestinians, saying that the U.S. should act promptly and decisively against any nation in the Middle East which attacks its neighbor, and that the Middle East needs water, not war, tractors, not tanks, and bread, not bombs. Kennedy frankly told the Zionists it cannot believe that Israel has any real desire to remain indefinitely a garrison state surrounded by fear and hate. And by maintaining objectivity and neutrality on the Israeli-Arab conflict, Kennedy wanted to steer the Zionists away from the racist, militaristic, and ultranationalistic impulses which have led to where we are today. Kennedy wanted the Zionist lobby to follow the rules, people. This is where it gets serious, okay? The second difference in Kennedy's policies regarding Zionist lobbying on behalf of Israel, something that they might still have yet to do. Under FARA, okay, organizations that promote or lobby on behalf of a foreign government are required to register and account for their finances and activities. So you tell me what you see here from this list of U.S. senators that received money from pro-Israel from 1990 to 2024. Who is that in first place? Coincidentally, that amount just went up as of yesterday. And look who's ironically in third place, right? You tell me where those finances are going. Because it doesn't just go one way, right? Oh, no, sir, it doesn't. As you can see, Mitch McConnell himself is on this list. He's a Republican, as we all know. Charles Schumer, Democrat. John McCain, Republican. Ted Cruz, Republican. Carl Levin. I mean, this list goes on, people. Including to your House representatives and senators themselves. So you tell me who's really in control. And you tell me from reading this part of this article why they really want to ban TikTok. In 1939, Kennedy himself spent 2 weeks in Palestine. In a lengthy letter to his father, he described the situation and difficulties. He wrote, "The sympathy of the people on the spot seems to be with the Arabs. This is not only because the Jews have had at least some of their leaders an unfortunately arrogant, uncompromising attitude, but they feel that after all, the country has been Arabic for the last few hundred years, and that it was hardly Britain's to give." Now let's keep in mind, Rishi Sunak, aka Britain's Prime Minister, just recently had a very secretive meeting with Barack Obama himself, and nobody seemed to be questioning anything about it. On November 21st, 1963, the day before Kennedy's assassination, people. As you can see, the New York Times had two different stories which exemplified the discord between Washington and Tel Aviv, with a report from the United Nations being titled, "Israel Dissents as UN Group Backs US on Arab Refugees." It begins a United States resolution calling for continued efforts to resolve the predicament of the Palestinian Arab refugees was approved tonight 83-1. With Israel themselves casting the single negative vote, people. With the second New York story being titled, "The U.S. Stand Angers Israel." As you can see here, I'm pretty sure it's obvious what JFK was trying to tell us, and you don't need me to read it off for you. A year before Kennedy died, intelligence indicated that Israel might be trying to build a nuclear weapon at Dimona in 1962. And Kennedy was determined to find out if this was true, and if so, to stop it. And this caused an intense diplomatic confrontation between JFK and Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, with the proof of this recently being revealed in the exchange of letters between Kennedy and Prime Minister Ben-Gurion himself. But I mean, come on, people, this is Mike Gallagher, okay, a Republican representative. The person who sponsored the original TikTok ban bill that didn't get passed through the Senate. The same exact one that was forced to be included in the foreign aid package bill for Ukraine and Israel themselves. With that right there being his top contributor. You tell me that's not ironic. And then after you're done, tell me who's really in control.